First of all, welcome everyone here today. I know we've been waiting for, well, some people have been waiting many years for this day to come, for this decision, so I appreciate everybody turning up and showing their interest, their passion in what we're here to discuss and decide today. And I'd also like to thank our officers, our stakeholders for their contribution to all of our plans, and our councillors. I know we've read many hundreds and hundreds of hours worth of information to get to this point here today, so thank you very, very much. Before we just go into the process as well, I just want to remind councillors, please, just a gentle reminder about our standing orders, and that it is important that everybody does have the opportunity to speak and ask questions, so please do raise your hand and wait to be invited to speak, and I will of course signal to you that it's your turn, you're next, etc. We want to keep things moving along, but we do want things to be orderly to help to make sure that we achieve the best decision that we possibly can today. So to move to the order of business, apologies, I don't have any. Haven't received any items for nobody for public forum. Declarations of conflicts of interest. I have Mayor Nigel. He isn't in attendance, but has declared a potential conflict with his business interest, which is not too far from the site of the Theatre Royal. And Councillor Parker?
I would just like it noted that I am a director on TDHL board and we own properties around the facility of the Theatre Royal, but I'm here today as capacity as a councillor, not director.
Just noted. So I'm happy to move those declarations. To the second. Thank you, Councillor Burt. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. So now we'll move to the item 4.1 of the reports, the Theatre Royal and Heritage Facility decision, the recommendation being that Council receives and notes this public update on the Theatre Royal and Heritage Facility project. I'll hand over to you, Nicole.
Thank you very much, and through the chair, councillors and members of the public, thank you for being here today and confirming a huge body of work over a number of years. And here we are with a decision for the Theatre Royal across the road, but also options and alternatives for you as requested. And we will step our way through all of the papers. We do have Rawlinson's and we have RDT online, so they are available if you have any further questions. Yes, I'll move that closer. Is that better? Yeah, thank you very much. So apologies. We do have RDT and we also have Rawlinson's online. If there are any further questions from you as we work our way through not only the public paper but also items in the public excluded. So what I want to do is open up first of all very quickly with some fly-throughs that we received for the theatre, and that closes out that whole picture, all the information you've had, and just enables you to see what would be delivered in that option one for you. If the team, could you just pop the first? Thank you. And then we do have a very quick fly-through of the back of house facilities, but it actually shows you the back of the entire building as well. So we'll just go through that one. Thank you, and thank you for your time for that. Coming back to the paper, the question really is, and I think we all agree, we want a theatre, or we want possible co-location of our community facilities. And to date, the history has been to concentrate on the particular site over on South Stafford Street. And I do invite councillors that have been on this journey for some time, if they wish to give any background to the history of the decision and the workshops that you would have had in determining that particular site. But the question is, the decision to go to that site, is that still really relevant now? And is another site or an alternative site giving you the facilities co-located the better option at this stage? I won't go into a lot of the detail in the paper. I think it speaks for itself. We do have City Town, which has highlighted some different changes for our main street and has identified different thoroughfares and routes, and possibly another location would sit more neatly with your City Town. Or is the bookend, which is South Stafford Street, still part of your City Town plan? I believe that maybe the genesis of the project started in South Stafford, but now, with the passage of time, are we at a decision whether actually another location is your better option, and then rethinking how to bring your services together? The options are in front of us, and you've just seen the fly-through of option 1, and we are looking at the Theatre Royal on Stafford Street. The project is ready to proceed. It has its consents in place, and we're just working through the building consents at the moment. We're not anticipating any issues. So everything's there, is ready. We can, and if you choose that option, go forward into construction quite quickly, and we maintain our MB funding, and we're away. Now, you could look at option 2, which is an alternative site, and that was actually your plan B, and that has come out to be possibly the library site. You may actually think about some other sites. So this has been an opportunity to put forward a plan B, but is the library site the right site for you? And should we look at other sites as well? So you've got that to look at. You can then, the pros of the co-location of several community facilities, more than you have at the current time on Stafford Street. You have got a concept plan and some information, but there's a lot more work would have to go into that, and opportunities to look at other options. Your option 3 is to actually reduce the scope on South Stafford Street, and do you actually just look at the Theatre Royal? And how do we encapsulate bringing that building back to life and opening up a theatre? And you pause and think about how you wish to proceed with co-locating other community facilities together. So that's a very valid option that is in front of you. And then the last option, but is it an option really to pause and rethink entirely? It is there because the public and others have said, well, what's the do-nothing option? But is it a do-nothing? And are you better to look at the other options that are in front of you? So I leave that because those are not my decisions to make. They are for you, but I'm just setting the scene for that conversation for you. And I think at that point, stakeholders had been invited on the return brief for meetings, council meetings. There has been a lot of history to get to where we are. And this is a wonderful opportunity to test the validity of this project that is in front of you, and rightly so. And does it still stand the test? Or actually, are there better options over the years that we've been working on this? And can we do it better and smarter? Yeah. And I think at that point, what I will do is hand that over, unless our CE has anything to add to that conversation.
So just on all the options, so the public paper don't have full analysis of the financials, but I can talk to those a little bit. So option 1 has been with us for quite a number of years, and it's been worked away at, and the budget set, as everyone knows, is 57.1, and we believe that that we're close to that. There are some items that still need to be negotiated. And in the paper, you can see the pros and cons of that particular option. It's ready to proceed. All consents are in place. We retain the remaining MB money, which is 6.8 million, and retention of a Grade 2 historic building. We do have on the con side, we do have a polarised community, some for and some against, and also the operational costs are higher than what we currently have. Option 2, this option came from 2 submissions from the public, and there was a view that if you combined the library, museum and theatre and potentially council chamber together, you could create a new building on the library site, because the library will need work done in the future. The current museum is earthquake prone, as is the theatre. That particular option is similar, probably going to be similar in capital cost to the current option 1. We haven't fully tested that yet, but it will be very similar. There will be cost savings and operational costs for the future, and that's a big component. A lot of people focus on the capital amount. The really important number is your operational amount, because that's the amount you're stuck with year after year after year. And they're the ones that we've got to pay for as ratepayers. You can spread the capital cost over 50 years over the life of the building. You could probably increase it even higher if you chose. We own that site, the library site. It also frees up land on the Barnard Stafford Street South for other potential growth areas, be it low commercial or housing. Again, the operational cost is an increase on what we're currently paying, but that's happens when you're actually building a new building. Option 3, it has a number of options. It's reduction in capital costs. So if you just did that, you retain a heritage listed building. A reduction in operating costs could be achieved by looking harder at how you operate the theatre. It's a traditional theatre versus a more auditorium-style theatre. It's an opportunity to combine the museum and library and other things in the future. So you could actually stand back and think hard about that. And again, there are other properties around Stafford Street that we could probably dispose of, and your debt funding would be lower. One of the things that we're all faced with is currently the museum, library and theatre have very low values on our books, probably undervalued, which means the depreciation we're currently putting through our profit and loss is lower than it should be. So when we do the upgrades, no matter which one we choose, there will be higher depreciation costs coming through. There will also be interest on the loan coming through, and those are two of the main drivers for the increase in rates that people will be charged with in the future. One of the things we've got to be very careful about is everyone sees the current option 1 as a theatre. It's not. It's a theatre and a museum. So when you look at the Theatre Royal, the annual rates we're paying at the moment is $14.80 because the Theatre Royal is just a building sitting there doing nothing. There are no other costs associated with it at the moment. It has historically been run by an organisation outside the council. So again, the council's contribution has been low. The current museum has a rating of about $56 a year, which is quite low as well. Both of these will increase. So the museum will go from $14 to $137 a year, and the museum will go to $322 a year. Caution the 136 for the theatre. It's also dependent on the revenue assumptions we've put at that and making sure we get that revenue through. Option 2, that capital cost, which will be similar, and the interest will potentially be spread over an additional service being the library. So the library is currently being charged depreciation quite low at, it's not on here, sorry. It's about $64,000 a year. It'll go up, which will drive a slightly increased cost in the library for that depreciation and interest. But if we revalue the library as it is now, it's still going to go up. And we will have to revalue that library at some point. So it's a little bit complex, the financials, but there will be an increase in rates no matter what we do, whether we do option 1 or option 2. Option 3 will also come with an increase in rates because if you spend $16 to $20 million on the current theatre, that will come with its own increased depreciation and interest. So those are the things we've got to think hard about. Have we got that? Did we manage to get that? On option 2, like we're just in the flyby for option 1, I think it's prudent that we'll show you the fly through for option 2, so we've got a good balance going on. So if you can show us that. Remember, this is only a concept. It's not going to be the actual, if you go with option 2, this is not what you'd probably actually build, but it could be. So this is going along Sophia Street. And this will be the new building. a dark hole. On the first level is a entranceway, a greeting area, and a council chamber, and also the entrance to the theatre. Downstairs would be the museum. Now going into the theatre. This has less seats. It would be about 550 to 600. The other one's about 750. You can divide that into two. Upstairs would be the library. This is downstairs where the museum would be. It's same size as the current plan, if not slightly bigger. This would be the council chamber. So as you can see, council's got a very significant decision to make. Do they continue with option one, which is, you know, renovating and strengthening our current theatre and adding a museum, or going brand new for the entire 3 or 4 functions that would be in the other building? Both will have similar capital costs. One, we believe, would have lower operational costs.
Thank you, Nigel. Just for clarity for everybody that's in the room as well, that you can see the recommendation for this particular report is to receive and note the report. That we, in terms of the actual decisions that we make, and the recommendations are in public excluded due to the commercial sensitivity of the figures that are contained within there, which we're potentially also compromising further negotiations if that was to change. But in saying that as well, what we do want to do, once we've had the opportunity to discuss and debate and engage with each other and thresh out those numbers, the intention is actually to bring the decision back into public once we've had the opportunity to do that. So again, noting that the recommendation is to receive a note for the first paper here. Any questions?
Considering we know the numbers that we're talking about is 57.1, why can we not have the whole discussion in public?
As you've seen, Councillor Booth, there is a lot of detail, specific detail in here it is commercially sensitive at this point until we've made a decision where we want to go. Until we've made a decision, we can't bring those individual figures out into the public. In the case, for example, we went for a Plan B, we need to keep those, and legal advice has been the same, that we can't bring those numbers into the public yet.
We're only dealing with one contractor though, and we've already paid them to supply this, so it's owned by, all this information is owned by the ratepayer. Should be public.
And we can make that decision in public excluded. We're not going to do it now. But meanwhile, any questions for Nicole or Chief Executive? Sorry.
Sorry, I agree with Councillor Booth. This should be public. We've come a long way on this journey. The decision should be in public with the reasonings given by individual councillors rather than go back behind closed doors. Same with the operating costs. The CE's mentioned figures. If we're going to increase, triple the cost of hiring a facility, those that hire it should know, because otherwise our predicted income may fall. I mean, we've just kind of done this the wrong way. And surely there's a couple of figures we could have taken out of those papers and not specifically targeted, and the rest of the discussion is actually where we sit, not the number, because any interested party that is any good at that will know pretty close to what the number is anyway. So I agree with Councillor Booth.
Pretty close is still not the detail, it's not the... Is there anything you'd like to add to that? Nigel?
With the current option, there is still some numbers to be negotiated, and that detail councillors will probably want to see. So the advice is to do that and exclude it. Also, then we can come back into public with the numbers that we need to open up to the public.
I see the bigger discussion is around the two options, and regardless of the number, it would have to be significantly different to preclude that discussion. It's black and white, in my mind anyway. But anyway, yep, sure.
I think there's two components here. One is to share the detail with you in public excluded, and then come back into public and have that conversation.
Councillor Burt.
Look, it's been a long journey and it's been subject to a significant amount of scrutiny and analysis around it. There's more work to be done there. There is nothing stopping us and any individual when we come back into public having that discussion openly around the decision and why the decision was made by each individual councillor if they so deem it necessary, and so that transparency is there. Nothing is going to be lost by that. My question, though, is I'm just questioning those figures that you gave us around the theatre in relation to the disparity between the theatre being at 137 and the museum at 322. Are those figures correct?
That's the figures I've got in front of me. It's the difference is the revenue that the theatre would generate to offset costs, where the museum, the revenue that a museum generates is significantly lower, and the capital and depreciation costs are similar because they're about 50-50 of the building for option one, so the costs do go up.
So, Mr. Traynor, just to build on that as well, from my understanding, we've always been quite public around the increase would not be significant to a ratepayer. $17, I think, has always been quoted. So today, if I heard you right, that we're looking at well over over $450 now.
137 for the theatre component and 322 for the museum component. So it adds up to about $450 a year.
So that is massively significant to what we've communicated to our community.
Yeah, that's the numbers that I would stick with.
Well, I think it should be known that this is new to us as councillors today and has a huge impact on our decisions. So I just want it to be noted that today this information received is not is quite new.
Since I've been here, I've never talked about $17.
Our papers over the last 12 months have said that.
Yeah, look, I don't think your numbers are quite right, Mr Traynor. Stacey's right. Despite some of us opposing it, $17 was promoted as the rate increase. Last year we went to $187.44, so we did 10 times that. The calculations, without going too much, divided by the ratepayer, I've got at $278, another $100 per annum. I think Councillor Pye was round that number as well. So you are a bit high, but we are telling ratepayers now it is another 100 a year on what we promoted. And my maths isn't good enough for what that is by $17, but it's heaps. So we, people need to know that, and they do need to know the operating cost of a hire of the theatre as well. And we haven't, again, told them, and that also should be in public.
Councillor Jackson.
Just for clarity, was that $17, that figure that was bandied around, was that just until such time as the Theatre and Heritage Hub actually opened?
No.
That was my understanding there, sorry.
No, it was marketed by the previous CE and staff as the increase to produce both of those, $17. It's in the paper, it's in our papers going back. We've now, and Nicole's nodding yes, we're now being a wee bit more transparent on the actual costs of this.
The problem.
Thank you. I got him first for a change. Holy hell. In terms of that $17, so again, this is something we need to discuss so that we can get down into the detail. But that was contingent on the amount of years that it was going to be spread over. Is that correct?
Yes, at that time we were looking at 80 years, and we didn't have any operational expenditure in that number. So that was worked through by the previous CE and CFO, neither here now. Those were the numbers that we were given at the time. I do agree that we've done a lot more modelling since, and we have a lot more detail, and we've been able to look at full operational, full depreciation, running costs and capital costs. And because we've had an increase in percentage rates as well in borrowings, those numbers have shifted significantly. Yes.
Just before we go to you, Councillor Booth, I just want to, this is actually good discussion that I think will help us to form the decision, and I just wonder if this is something we can take to the decision-making process and receive a note this and go into PX, get that out of the way and include all of this in our discussion and debate. Sorry? You happy to move?
I'd like to ask a different
Sure.
question once you've cleared up what we're talking about now.
Okay. And Councillor Booth has been waiting very patiently, and I know Beth wants to say something.
I guess we did question that $17 at the time. And even though we questioned it, we were sure that that was going to be the number, and it went out for consultation, which it should never have done. We knew it was grossly inaccurate. It didn't take a rocket scientist to know that. So, there's a failing upon how we've consulted with the public. And if you try to manufacture something, that's what you're going to get. So I think the bigger discussion is what value for money we can get, best bang for buck for our ratepayer, and provide them the services and that all-inclusive big picture. And certainly that's the discussion that we need to have.
Right, before I go to you first, Councillor Pye, I know Beth wanted to contribute to that, is that correct?
Thank you, through you, Mr Chair. Just in terms of the operational model as well, and I'm hearing your point, Councillor Piddington, As a primary architect of the operational plan, I would advise against it for a number of reasons. So 2 operational models have been tabled, but they are specific to the Stafford Street site and the site specifications. So those figures may change depending on the decision that may take place today and whether or not you proceed with that particular project. Furthermore, of the 2 options, one proposes a commercial entity, which means that we would likely go out to bid for that service. And so that essentially becomes a commercially sensitive process, I would say. But I'd also confirm that this is an iterative process as well. So we are still working through the best options, but it will be contingent on the decision made about the particular facility.
I'd just like to thank you for the fly-through of the theatre. That is the first time I have seen that, and I'm not sure if it was recently made or I've just missed something. Just recently made, thank you. I get that the second one is not fully costed, it's only an idea, but the first one is. So can you tell me, does the 57.1 million include everything we saw in that fly-through, including the car parking, the landscaping and everything?
So I can confirm that the landscaping, the car parking, trees and cost of some trees, which amounted to a very small amount, and I will say less than $15,000 without giving the number, have to be put forward. But we have done full fit out at the back of house. There are still some items, headsets and bits and pieces that are still to be purchased, but we have put everything that was required in the scope through into that building. Not perfect. We've done some value engineering works. We've looked at materials, but we have delivered on the wider scope of what was requested by stakeholders. And we've got, apart from I'm happy to talk to those 3 things, we have not fitted out the top floor of the changing facilities, but there was a request that we actually leave that as a big open space. We don't have an orchestra pit lid, which is an extension of the stage, but that is something that we can put in at a later date. And we have taken out what we call a bulkhead system through the front of the foyer of the Theatre Royal, and we will pump air from the side of the new building into that area and replace the air curtain. Other than that, we have actually been able to tick everything on the list.
Can I just make a correction? You guys are right. I gave you the total of the combined for the museum. So the theatre will go from $14.77 to $136.81, and the museum $56.78 to $185.90. It gives a total of $322 for those 2.
Yeah, look, bit disappointing on the last day to get a fly-through of what the building had looked like. Thought that might have happened a year ago. I just wonder if the CE could give a wee bit more of an explanation of the last fly-through, or the first fly-through of option B, how it came about, just so everyone's in the picture rather than just putting up a clip without some sort of explanation to help the public.
So following the LTP hearings, one of the entities that were at those hearings went away and actually started working on 2 options themselves. One was for a theatre museum to be placed on Caroline Bay, and then they also did a second one, which was the one you've seen, which was for a theatre, library, museum and a council chamber on the library site. At the same time, another member of the public also did a option, and the option was for the same location, for the same services, with a different looking building. That one was very concept, both are concepts. The first one, they've done some costings on it. However, there needs to be a lot more work done to come out with an accurate costing of what it would be. But they believe it would be a similar sort of number to the option 1. That's how they came about.
Could you just clarify for the public that the council chamber is news to everyone and it is not something that anyone in this room requested or wanted? Because I would hate that to be the headline if we chose option B just because we're getting the new chamber.
These were both non-solicited options given to council.
It was just a space. It wasn't a council chamber. It was a civic space.
Yeah, true. I took the opportunity.
Councillor Jackson.
I'm a little bit perplexed that no one else has seen that fly-through of the option 1, because I've certainly seen it. You've seen it, so I'm not quite, don't understand why you guys didn't see it, sorry.
You did see a pathway design for developed, and then this is now the finished article. Yeah.
Do we have any further questions, or Councillor Jackson?
Nicole, I'd just like to ask, please, we've spoken about, and I know from the CE, about the things that we stand to perhaps gain from Plan B plus. What do we stand to lose by not going ahead with option 1?
Very, very good question. And it comes down to dollars. It comes down to the funds that have been spent to date and the very possible loss of the remainder of the MB funding that we have because of a contractual break. There is a risk, and quite a high risk, that we would lose that going forward into any other options. Outside of that, what do we lose? The possibility of a Theatre Royal and that building, a heritage building, being there and open and preserving that history that sits with that building. I think on lots of other ideas for option 2, we gain in both. So the losses are actually, yes, the dollars spent to date, the time and the energy that has gone into option 1, but actually a beautiful theatre, as in a Theatre Royal. And if we don't go ahead with that building, then it's acknowledging that that theatre and that area of land could have a different life and a different purpose at some point in the future. I believe those are the losses. But equally, there is an awful lot to gain from both ideas on both sides.
I'll just add to that. I'll back up Nicole. Yes, we received $11.6 million from MB, which about $4 million of that has already been spent. That would have to be written off as a non-cash item for us. So the write-off would hit our bottom line, but it's non-cash. There is some cash we have put into that plan. That would also be a write-off. But I think you've got to think forward in terms of 50 years this building will be up, whichever one we do, and what is the cost of running that for 50 years. So we've got to be very deliberate. Time spent now might save a lot of money in the future, depending on which option you go with. Yeah, so it's mainly historical building would category 2 historical building would have to be decided what we do with that, and then just the effect on South Stafford Street.
So you talk about what to do with that building moving forward. It's category 2, so what are the options? Are we going to be left with a building on Stafford Street as an eyesore for the next 10, 20, 30 years? What do we do with it?
No, you could do one of two things. It could be sold and used for a different purpose, or it could be demolished. So category 2 does not prevent it being demolished.
And the reason why it's not occupied is because it's unsafe. So, you know, the reasons why we're doing this is to create a safe building again. So at the moment, it is an unsafe building under the earthquake. So that's hence the reason why we're here, is because we need to fix a building that is currently unsafe and cannot be occupied. Or not, yeah.
Councillor Pye.
I just have a question relating to the point 35, option 1, and the pros and cons table. It says that one of the pros for option 1 is that the project is ready to proceed with all consents. Is that true? Because I thought we still had another couple of consents to get.
So we had an original resource consent for the demolition works at the back of the Criterion Hotel and the civil works. So that, and now the main consent for all works, resource consent, is granted. We are currently working through the building consents, which follow the granting of the resource consents. They are in train now. Information has been backwards and forwards, and they're doing what we call a PS1, which is a review, a peer review, and all of that information is tabled. And there will be a PS2 on 3 items, which is the structural steel and the mechanical and some other works on the building. That is quite a normal process. We have not heard from the building department if there are any issues with that. And we have an ECAN water, what we call discharging water on site, and that is currently going through, again, with no indication of any issues. So all things being equal, we should actually receive those, and they're in train now, and that will be in time for any works. So that's what's outstanding at this stage.
But it's not ready to go like the paper indicates.
We would have some conversation with South Base. If you went ahead with this, there is a month and a half of 2 weeks of 2 months of nailing the last of the clauses, and then, but the works can actually begin on the civil works. There's nothing now to stop us actually starting all those demolition whilst the rest of those consents are coming through. So technically, yes, we are actually ready to go. We just then work with the demos and the work on the site, and then the building consents will follow through.
Thank you. Just a point of order for those in the gallery. Just a warning that you will be asked to leave if you continue interjecting as you did. Part of the proceedings doesn't actually allow for the public to participate in it, I'm afraid, no. But you're more than welcome, please do. Don't believe we have the opportunity to do that, do we? Pardon?
If there's any discussion.
If there's any discussion, we can. No, we can do that. Yeah, we'll find a way if that can be contributed. We'll find a way. Sorry, Michelle?
Could I ask a question of the CE to give us more information on option 3, please?
So option 3 is just earthquake strengthening and refurbishing the existing theatre and not doing anything else. Now, the costs that we've got there, we estimate somewhere 16 to 20 million, but that is a guesstimate. If we went down that track, you would probably pull back on the design of option 1. Option 1 has a new back of house. We'd have to debate whether you would do that if you were just refurbishing. So that is what option 3 is, which means that at a later date, the museum and potentially library would have to be looked at. Option 4 is we don't do anything. We just let everything sit as it is now. Well, as a CE, my view is that's probably not an option.
Also, Mr Traynor, would suggest that the current theatre back of house would not meet the current building code. So someone would have to convince me on that because it is not fit for purpose in the current building code.
Those are bridges we'd have to cross as we decided what to do with it.
Thank you. No further questions. Can we move to a recommendation? Can we move to the recommendation so we can get into PX and get back out? Can we do that? Who'd like? Thank you, Councillor Burt. You're going to move that. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Pike, all those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Right, so we're going to move to public excluded now, please. Right, if everyone would like to take their seats, please, we'll get back underway. Welcome back. Good to be back in the daylight. Hey, Councillor Booth. He was getting a chair and a seat there. He's worried about his lunch now, yes. Yeah. So, what we will do, we will go, let's just pick up where we left off, with that discussion. Were there any more questions there about the pardon? Discussing the options. Sorry, Councillor Pye.
So I just want to be 100% clear, and I know we now are in this room, but for the public, exactly what the cost of option 1 is, because it is 57.1 million is what we're talking about. But we need to be honest about what's not in that figure, around land purchases we've made around there, around the $3 million fit out that the museum, because I know the museum are paying for that and I know we're getting MB money, but the reality is we need to focus on the actual cost and whether that's value for money. And so I wouldn't mind if you could just spell out as best you can the actual cost of this project, please.
I could answer that for you if you like. So the building itself is 57.1 million. So that's the building and the car park at the back. The museum fit out is $3 million. Plus we've also budgeted 700,000 for a facility for storage of artefacts. The land, I don't have that with me, of what land we did purchase.
So it's approximately 900,000, but it does go back to 1961 with the theatre in the first instance, and then 2005 for 2 small little buildings. We were 2008, I believe, for the Army Hall, I'll just check, and then the 2 significant strategic purchases were actually the Criterion Hotel and the Chinese Gardens next door. They were approximately 750,000, but they were done strategically when the decision was made to use South Stafford Street.
And there is also a unbudgeted amount that will have to be found of about 438,000 for further FF&E.
Yesterday it was 880.
Yeah.
But also for the benefit of the public, when you're talking about what the final price is, you still have to take off the MBIE money, because that's not money that our ratepayers are paying for, yes? Correct?
They are as a taxpayer though.
They're not paying for interest on that money, but it does, the depreciation is based on the full 57.1, so it's mixed.
I understand what you're saying though, Councillor Jackson, yes, that's what the ratepayer wants to know, is what they are paying in their rates. That's what they want to know. Councillor Scott.
I think just to add to that too is, and I know, and I always believe that we only have one pot of money, right? And there are other costs that are sitting outside and other departments within TDC that factor into this project, and that's water infrastructure, it's parks and recreation. There are a lot more costs that are associated with this project that are not foreseen in the 57.1. Now, and I'm not trying to, belittle the numbers, but for transparency, there is a lot more millions in this project than what's in these papers, and so and we've really struggled to be able to communicate that, I think, to our community in a transparent way.
Councillor Burt.
And without any presumption of where I'm heading with this, in terms of land purchases, they were made strategically, and including the land purchase across the road, with the ability to look at investment in South Stafford Street because of the situation that has developed over years there, to liven it up and to produce opportunities. The other thing is any other option is also likely to trigger things like infrastructure that of itself, based on its existing use and capacity, would be stretched again by investment of this nature. So all those things would eventually have to be replaced anyway.
Sally?
Thank you. I have a question. So in our papers, it identifies that there's been some deferred works list that has been made, so construction meets budget, so deferred works so it meets within the budget. Then also it identifies that there's been multiple comments on reduced acoustic or downgrade in acoustic performance, and I want to know how that is going to how the user experience is going to be affected by these downgrades in acoustic performance.
Yep. So first of all, being very clear, the downgrade in the acoustic performance is not inside the theatre auditorium. So this is actually in the education space where we've swapped out the walls and some of the walls for a wooden surface. And the same for the back of house, where we felt that actually acoustic was not required to the extent. It was almost an over-specified design by the architect. So being very clear, it is not actually the auditorium or a reduce in the acoustics of that experience. Yep.
OJ? Yep.
Just further to that, Nicole, there has been, and again, it's for the benefit probably of those people who might be watching in today, but there's been a lot of talk about the functionality of that theatre compared to Ashburton, right? Ashburton being a reasonably modern theatre. So can we just clarify exactly how functional our theatre will be if we go ahead with this theatre compared to Ashburton?
It will have the same function. We've got 41 to 43 lines, and they have 50 plus, but they wouldn't use all of those fly lines. We have a side stage, then we also have a docking area where we have all the changing facilities, and what you have is the traditional theatre. So I'll go theatre side first of all, so the actors, etc. So you've got the space, you've got the green room, you've got all of those, what you would expect normal facilities in the back. If I come to the public perspective, you have a completely refurbished auditorium, so new carpets, new floors, new seats, warmth coming up through the floor, and then the sound systems, the lighting systems, and the overall experience. Multi-millions of dollars have been put into the actual systems, the fly systems and the support systems for that theatre experience. In exact detail difference, I think you've just got a larger audience and you've got a traditional theatre experience as opposed to a smaller audience, but you still have a large stage, you still have the fly systems. In that regard, it might just be similar offerings, but just in a different space shape.
Just following on from OJ's question, I'm sorry, that's not quite true. We gave them Hobson's choice. We never offered them a brand new build, which they wanted. We don't have a loading deck under the stage. I don't want to go into it, but we've got to be honest and say we didn't give them a free choice. This is the only choice they gave, and that they've come along. And they were very unhappy up till last year how much input they got in that to the theatre. And I don't know at the end, one of my concerns, it will deliver what they actually wanted. It does retain the Theatre Royal, but as an operational theatre, I don't think we got anywhere near what they desired.
So I think a lot of it does come down to what Nicole just spoke about, which is capacity. So Ashburton and Oamaru themselves have admitted that a lot of the business that they're unable to accommodate is going to come to Timaru if we were to open this option in the Theatre Royal. They themselves admitted that during our consultation process. We have 800 seats, if we were to go with option one, there's 800 seats as opposed to 500. Ashburton Theatre was built 16 years ago, so their technology and their capabilities won't be nearly as progressed as what we would have with option one. With a fly floor such as the theatres, whilst it's very old, it's very large, it's very strong, and it's very expensive to rebuild. And so we would have the capabilities to host shows that could generate an enormous amount of economy from around the district that the other theatres locally cannot do.
I will add to that as well, through you, Mr Chair, that in terms of the tech fit-out that has been supplied through the contract with South Base as well has been comprehensively reviewed, peer-reviewed. We travelled up to Christchurch and met with the manager of the Isaac Theatre there, who went through it line by line with us to ensure that what we are actually offering in terms of AV kit sound is the top of the range as well. So I do recall some of the public consultation that took place in 2022 well, which specifically was targeted at users to ensure that their specific requirements were factored into the design.
Thank you. Councillor Booth.
Did we ever give them the option of brand new?
No, that option was not on the table.
That's all I need, thank you.
Yeah, but we have to counter that with as a group of elected members. At that time, and up until a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, you had agreed that site was the site and the theatre royal was the building you were going to upgrade. We are now looking at that opportunity of another site and a brand new experience.
Yeah, look, I'm not sure where to start, but quite frankly, on 27 and 18, and some common sense prevailed. When these numbers came in, and initially it was hastily dreamt up because we were advised planning was well advanced. We were shovel ready when we accepted that money from MB with a number of, I think it was 26.9, which quickly went up to 31.2 million. And in fact, I was in support of it at that point because it seemed, well, 11.6 from the government, let's just get on and do it. But unfortunately, those numbers that were given right from the outset, and if only we'd been honest with ourselves right from the outset and actually done the proper numbers and had a proper plan and planned diligently, so we actually knew what that number was going to be rather than just take a guess. And here we are now at 57.1. It's still nuts in my mind, and the idea that we're now only considering option 2 is really to the detriment of our consultation, which was just crazy. We never gave people any options. It was always to fit the narrative of what we're trying to achieve, or whoever was trying to achieve, to actually put lipstick on a pig. So I'm basically suggesting that some common sense is finally being put on the table for us all to consider. And we knew the library was having problems, was potentially going to need replacing at some point. So why did we not have a holistic look at the whole situation? Building lifespans generally, if you look at the depreciation schedule, you're supposed to just do it over 30 years. We're up to 50. Initially, the consultation was based on 80. And a stupid number was put in front of the public of $17.19, when we knew actually that was grossly way off the pace. And I don't know how we ever agreed to that consultation going out. And the option to do nothing was never there, as was any other options put on the table for people to consider. So from my point of view, it's black and white. We need to stop this nonsense and actually get on to some common sense. That library site will actually underpin the redevelopment of our CBD. It's critical that will be the catalyst for the rejuvenisation of our CBD. It's pointless having a bookend where you don't know where that bookend finishes, all right, and starts. So at the end of the day, you need some books to put in that bookshelf. And if we haven't got any books, there's going to be a big gap. So let's common sense prevail here. We're going to get the best of a new theatre, a new museum, a nice sunny spot, a civic space for everyone to go to. It's a no-brainer. Thank you.
Councillor Burt, did you still?
I haven't got sound bites like that, I'm sorry. Yeah, and common sense is probably not so common, but I do take exception to the fact that a prudent council back then would have made decisions. You were there through the process and you made the decisions. You even admitted just before you were for it at 31. You weren't over the top in regarding to have other options or anything. But anyway, at the end of the day, I'm not here for sound bites. Common sense actually runs around democracy and the ability for each of us to make decisions. And so I'll leave it with that.
Councillor Parker.
Nicole, in the report, it talks about sufficient contingency is available for the early stages of the project, which is a concern that as the project goes on, we haven't got significant contingencies for. Can you talk me through that a little bit, please?
Yes, so the commentary of the contingency, the riskiest part is the first 6 to 7 months, and those are the items that South Base have provisionally put to one side in the amount. Our contingency is covering that work. Once we get through that, the remainder of the project they've actually fixed, and they're taking that risk, though we would still want to have some contingency offering. So the contingency is across the build, but South Base have a large contingency within the number that they've put down, and then we're holding the contingency across the provisional sum. The first 6 to 7 months are the riskiest part, and that is what that is referring to, if that helps.
Look, one of my big worries on this project is the contingency. It doesn't matter when it comes, Nicole, at the beginning or the end, but we're responsible for any unforeseen building or ground conditions. And if you talk to anyone about a heritage project, the ground and the buildings are the big worry. And I'm sorry, everyone I've spoken to said 7.4% is way too low on a project like this. I'm not an expert on that, but we are taking that risk, and they don't know what the number is. Following from Councillor Booth, I agree. Our consultation hasn't been great. We started at 21, 30, 40, and this is where we landed. We promoted $17 a year, and everyone in this room would be into it at $17 a year. But it's actually $278 a year per person every year. So there's a big difference. The cost of it in 2028 to the ratepayers, $6.3 million. So if we're going to build something, it's got to be utilised, as Councillor Pyers said, for conferences and other things to bring that cost to the ratepayer down, not a single-use theatre.
So back to the first comment around contingency. So South Base have tabled two numbers for you. One is the fixed sum, one is the provisional. Now, in fixing that sum, they've taken the risk. That is the whole, and then they hold, as per a contractual arrangement, a percentage of the contingency, which covers any items within that amount of figure. The rest
I
is
understand that, Nicole, but it does not take unforeseen building or ground conditions. We are holding that risk.
Yes, we are, and that is in the provisional sum, and that is the contingency that we have aside, which covers that, which is the first 6 or 7 months of the build is your riskiest part. Yeah. In regards to other comments, again, I can't reply to the decisions that have been made. We've followed council process. Decisions have been made within PX and then also in public, which have brought us to where we are with the design that we've got. The market has moved in that time. It moved during COVID. It moved when we were making decisions and during your elections, and the materials, etc., went up significantly. In regards to the dollar rating, if you go with another option, you have to be aware that there will be costs associated with another option, albeit we would look to reduce the operational costs, but there still will be an increase to the rates in some way or other if you choose another option which has a significant build to it. I think we have to be very clear about that.
Thank you. Yeah, and it needs to be made clear as well, we don't get to opt out of the decisions we've already made. With regards to consultation and everything over the years that have passed, we made those decisions. Councillor Burt.
For public transparency, those questions were asked of our experts, Rawlinson's, earlier, and they actually said that while 7.5% or whatever it is there does appear to be low, because of the procurement process specifically or bespoke to this particular process, that South Base are taking on most of the risk, and they also said significant amount of geotech material or work had been done exploring the ground and everything around it that gave them comfort around that. So although it does sound like in a normal process it might be a small amount, they did give us some comfort around that, so just for transparency.
I must have misheard that, because when we had the conversation with them around appropriate contingency, ideally it would, we are $3 million short. And I'm sorry, but I've been going on about this, but the contingency is the most important part to reducing risk. And we heard today that ideally it is short. And so instantly we are $3 million short in a risky project. We also have, since receiving the papers, and we've all done our own analysis, you know, we're $3 million short in costs that haven't even been included yet, and we haven't finished off things. So if you add those up, just those two figures, my analysis, we're $6 million out. And I'm sorry, but, you know, if we're talking about transparency, Mr. Burt, Councillor Burt, whatever you want to be called, I'm sorry, but my analysis says that we are significantly short.
Councillor Jackson, and then I think Councillor Oliver, did you want to ask something as well? Yeah, you're fine, okay.
So,
Sure.
Councillor Scott,
Pike,
in
yeah.
saying that we are, you're saying $6 million short, so it's no longer 80 million that you claimed in the council chambers?
Well, my work would say we're at 63, 64, and we haven't got a full fixed price cost.
But it's not 80 million. Can I just also, for clarity here, just mention that...
Well, if you add up everything else, buildings that we've bought,
Well, you can
the
come back to
water
that, but that's
infrastructure
actually
work that we need
my
to
point
do,
here.
which will be $3 million. Well, probably is going to get close to 80 if you want me to do a full spreadsheet.
80 million, so I'll quote you on that.
Said, if you want me to do a full
One at a time, please, team.
analysis,
One at a
I'm
time,
more
please.
than happy to do that.
Yep. Councillor Jackson.
The words of our quantity surveyor, Rawlinson's, were that there was plenty of detail in the sums. Again, this is for public transparency. The risk profile lowers. The contingency level, he said, was practical and comfortable, and the 7.2% contingency was fine for what we are doing. They were his words.
Councillor Pye.
Not even really sure where to start. I'm concerned that the report we received doesn't address risk properly, and that is what we're here to manage. And I'm not just talking about the risk of doing a project on an old building, I'm also talking about the risk that in 2 years' time we end up in exactly the same position we are here now, with new councillors sitting around the table, and we have not moved forward. And I'm not saying that it is not a reason to go down a rabbit hole, as Councillor Booth calls it, but we need to work out how we're going to manage that risk, because it is a risk. I also am concerned that we are making this decision without the full picture of our whole building and property portfolio across the entire district. We sit in this chambers and every time a truck goes past, the whole building shakes. You can feel it. I don't know, as a councillor, what earthquake-prone buildings we own in the whole district. And so I feel like we need to have a good look at our whole property portfolio and make a decision that is strategic and long-term and not just solving today's problem, because that's what I feel like we're doing. But my question to the CE and Nicole is, how do you think we can manage the risk that we don't end up in this point in 2 years' time, if we choose to go with a different option than option A?
So my response to that is we would have to move at pace. So if you decide to go down a different option, we would need to work that up quickly. We'd have to get out to the community to consult on that, and we'd also have to get to the market as quickly as possible and then approve it and get on with it. Now, if you went down an alternate option, depending on what it is, it could answer some of your questions on the earthquake-prone side of things. But it's not, it's being united, getting united on this is the project we're going for, stay united and work it through.
I think to add, it would be also the reporting back and timely in regards to if you required cost estimates at prelim, you're developed, etc. So it's also that timeline and the decisions you make through that process as information comes back to you to finally get to the point where we are now. Yes.
Councillor Oliver.
I've just got a quick question. It's around what Councillor Pye said about our facilities, knowing that I've got one in my part of the world. Are we heading towards some pretty strong headwinds that some of our facilities are going to need quite a bit of work done on them, and some of that work's unbudgeted at this stage?
Yes, we have. We have buildings that are going to require some maintenance, and I say that because maintenance on our vertical has not been as good as it could be over a number of years, and that's not just here, that's over a long time. And I think if you want to use the word prudent, I think it is quite correct that there is a bigger picture here to look at. We have earthquake-prone buildings. There's no getting away from that, and some of that is in the public realm. And we need to think about the library in the future, not because it's earthquake-prone, but because there's a lifespan on that building. Yes, the public would like a theatre, and there is something we need to do with our museum at some point. So I think it is pertinent to think about the larger picture of property that we have. And part of that option B, part of your plan B, the library site is an option. It doesn't have to be the only option. And you can, at that point, think your way through how you want to deal with your properties. You can ask for that information as a plan B comes up through the opportunity to talk. You can ask for that further detail, that information, that bigger, wider strategic plan. At the moment, your strategic plan is around your offerings here in the centre of town. I come back to the original paper here. Is option one that you're looking at in the right place? If it's not, your opportunity for option two is to look at what would be the right place and then what would be the right facilities that you want to pull together in view of the work that you would need to do with your wider portfolio.
Gavin, then Stu.
We've talked a lot about the library, but we don't actually know how much life's left in it. We put a 7-year patch on it a year ago. How long has the library got left in it before we have to, it becomes a critical upgrade or a rebuild?
So I do not have a condition report for the library. That work has not been done. We have a building in the early 70s. It is a concrete building, Warren and Mahoney design, but concrete of an old-fashioned design. If we think about the bleachers project that we had, concrete, it had a 50 to 60 year lifespan. We would have to suggest a new roof in another 5 years. And we have tabled in the longer term picture to think about the library in 10 years' time. You step back because it takes 1 or 2 years to go through, and as Councillor Pye noted, the timeline it takes to make your decisions around some of your facilities. You would have to start planning in 7 years' time if you were going to replace that structure or that building. Yeah.
So there was an assessment done in 2018 on the earthquake status, so it wasn't a full, it was just an initial. It had it at 40%, which is relatively low. Standards have changed since 2018, so we'll need to do that again if we choose to retain that building. Some of the main issues is, tying roof to walls and things like that, that report identified, but it wasn't a final report. It was just an initial assessment. I also think the other, while we talk about strategy, it's really important to nail the strategy for Timaru CBD, particularly South Stafford Street. We have a large land holding, including the Theatre Royal. Timaru District Holdings have a large land holding with buildings of all sorts of decay on it, and we also have other buildings on that block for sale. So there's a big opportunity there if we can strategically think about that space and line that up with the CBD. I think strategically, this is our golden opportunity. We've got aged buildings all around us, and we need to actually make sure our decisions are for the future, as well as dealing to our current needs. And I think we also have some uniqueness, particularly in our main street, our Edwardian type of buildings. We don't celebrate that enough. We don't make enough of that. We need to think hard about that as well. So there's some really good thinking needing to happen here, and here's our golden opportunity. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
I agree with the CEO. This is a one-in-a-lifetime to do it all on one site, but we don't help ourselves. In our long-term plan, we've got nothing for the library, even the roof. So it comes as a surprise to people that we're doing it, yet we're now putting it at the front. Because if we do the current project and do the stadium, our debt level won't allow a library in 5 years' time. So we do need to think strategically. And if it delivers a library, a theatre and a museum at relatively the same cost, because it's a new build and we take all the risk away, we'd have to be mad not to look at it.
Look, just following on from that, the library's 50 years old. For a similar amount of money, for a theatre and a museum, which actually is only going to be half a museum, remember, because we're going to have the other museum still going, we can actually get 3 major civic facilities, brand new, in a great location. So literally that's a 50% discount if we make the right decision now. So we're going to get the library taken care of. It's 50 years old. That location and the ability to make it a civic public place, it will be gold in the future to our ratepayers and our CBD. We have great heritage in the main street, and we need to attract people back into the hub. So it's part of the plan. I believe that there is a great opportunity, and we need to stop, regardless of the money. It's going to be around about probably the same potentially. I can't say what it is going to be, but we're going to get a lot better value on behalf of our ratepayers, and we're going to be looking for a facility that will be there for 50 years from now. And that's a long time. And synergies, 1.5 million per year in savings in OPEX is massive over that period of time. a new, warm, sunny building, a space that the public can go and spend time at, right in the middle of town. It's gold. So it's just absolute slam dunk for me.
Councillor Pye.
Just thinking about Mr Trainor's view that we need to be united going forward, and without ruling out other options, I note, Councillor Booth, you have strongly changed your view from it being on the bay to being in the CBD. And I just want to make sure that going forward we can be united and we're not going to waste another 3 years deciding on where this should go.
I'm united now. Let's get on with it. I don't know there's no point putting it off. We need to make a decision here today and let our chief executive get onto it.
Councillor Scott.
Oh, I suppose since we're in that team, let's go for it. So, you know, I want our community to be proud and feel the value in what their money is being spent on. And I feel that this current project will be subpar due to limited budgets, and they will not have the experience that they are expecting. And I think that we need to be more fiscally responsible with ratepayer money and the value of what we're delivering in our infrastructure projects. And unfortunately, I don't believe that this project in its current state will deliver the experience our community is expecting. And it absolutely disappoints me that we've got to this stage, and I apologise for the last 6 years. I've only been at this table for 18, 19 months, but I think that for this amount of money, we can do better for our community and deliver a better community facility that will be well used, and the community will be respectful of what our vision would be for like a Plan B. So that's where I sit.
Thank you, Councillor Scott. Councillor Booth.
I'd like to move a motion that we ditch the Theatre Royal project and we start looking at option 2.
Right, let's just looking at the wording of that motion, Councillor Booth. So your motion, we've got different words here for you, okay? To decline the South Base construction offer and pursue public consultation on all reasonably practical options, being what you're talking about there, including the three options, that, you know, a Plan B.
Which would include a new
build,
a new theatre, a new museum, a new civic space.
Yeah, because when we consult, we want to give them options, our people options this time. You remember you weren't happy that we didn't include all the options for them last time? So it would be the three options: a Plan B, a reduced scope of works for the Theatre Royal, or stop the project and reconsider the future of the council-owned community facilities. Is that correct, or is that not what you're saying here?
I don't support a reduced scope of works for the Theatre Royal.
Okay. Yeah,
Can
Michelle?
we just...
Are you going to reword it for us?
Sorry, well, I'm just going to stop partway through what's in here. Decline the South Base construction offer and pursue public consultation on alternate options, full stop, without expressing how many or what they are, just on alternate options.
You got that, Rachel?
That's what Councillor Booth was trying to move. I'd be happy to second that.
Okay. You got that, Rachel? Right.
I mean, at the end of the day, the reason we're at this point is because that option has been muted.
Yeah, you've made the motion. It's been seconded. Who else? Who would like to speak for or against the motion?
Yep. I'll speak against the motion. Firstly, Nicole, I'd like to congratulate you and your team for the work that's been done. There's certainly been a whole lot of challenges along the way. I mean, there's been challenges for us as councillors as well, and as Councillor Scott just mentioned before, we've sort of come into this project halfway through, we've been landed with it. And I, for one, before I even got into council, thought that this would have been well and truly settled, and that I wouldn't be in this situation. I know that other people around the table think the same way, but it is what it is. And God forbid you've had a lot of stuff to come up against and a lot of demands being made on you and your team, so well done, congratulations. I'd also like to thank publicly too Rawlinsons and RDT for giving us the information that we needed to make the best decision that we think we're making. And I personally, I feel honoured to be in this situation because I think representing our community as we are in a big project like this, and they don't come along that often, and you know, I've been around for long enough in public life. I know what happened when the Piazza was put out to the public. I know what happened when the Sea Bay was put out to the public. Hugely divisive, and no matter what decision you make, 50% of the people are going to say, great, and 50% are going to say, bad. So, you know, it's a very difficult situation to be in. But we've consulted again, we've debated, we've been thrown a few curveballs lately as well. So, you know, for me, I just think that if we don't do something with the south end of Stafford Street, as was the first thing that we were supposed to be doing, that was all part of the plan, and that was part of City Town's plan, to revitalise the south end of Stafford Street, bookend it, and make sure that it was a great heritage hub for the future. So, for me, a theatre-only option is just simply not an option. Economies of scale just doesn't make any sense, and we're still left with the same situation that we're in at the moment with a museum that's not going to be fit for purpose. So I'm not prepared to go down that road. Now we've come to Plan B. So a real curveball, late innings. I'm sure that Stu Piddington will appreciate that sports talk. Look, it's got some merit, absolutely, but it's come right at the very death. Where was this plan? As Councillor Booth has mentioned, where was this plan years ago? Why didn't it come forward much earlier in the piece? Instead, we get thrown this right at the very last minute, and look, it looks like a great plan, I totally agree, but it feels incredibly rushed. Now, we can all talk about it's going to cost 56 or 57 million, similar to what we're doing at the moment. God forbid if we get struck down by COVID again, yeah? Because that's what's pushed the price of this project through the roof. And I can see that sort of thing happening again. I don't feel confident that 2 years from now, the 56 million that were being laid out in front of us for Plan B Plus will be what it is in 2 years from now. When it comes to the Theatre Royal Heritage Centre, I'm comfortable that we've done the due diligence. We've done as the public asked us to do. We went out, we consulted. And like I say, we consulted again. I'm happy with the financial projections moving forward that our CE, Nigel Traynor, has put forward to us. I know there's going to be some short-term pain, but I think long-term gain with those figures. I think the risk of not doing this project far outweighs the risk of doing it. And I know that Andrew Dixon, our infrastructure manager, is in the room. He's going to hate me saying this, but it will not be cheaper now. Sorry, it won't be cheaper in the future than it is now. Yeah? End of the story. This is the cheapest time to do this project. We've been given the MBIE money. We've got a rock-solid plan. Our local subbies, who haven't been mentioned today at all, are going to benefit from this. And we're not going to be at the risk of becoming a cultural wasteland. The project aligns with the City Town strategy, which we've been over. And I'd like to see us create a sustainable heritage precinct in the south end of our CBD. And so for those reasons, I support going ahead with the Theatre Royal Heritage Centre plan as it stands. It's time to be bold and brave and to get on with it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jackson. Councillor Parker.
Thank you. And thank you to everyone that's contributed today. Where was this plan? I do believe Councillor Jack once mooted the thought of using the library site, so it has been discussed in this chamber some years ago. And with respect to heritage and the magic that the heritage theatres bring, like for example the Civic in Auckland, I I cannot support this at this time. What I'm thinking is, what does this impact? What will this impact? What impact will this investment have on our longer society goals? So I look at civic engagement, the increase of public life and stewardship for our society, the social economic mixing, creating a place that creates and connects greater diversity. I don't see that. I see a plan B will be greater in that space. I see improving resiliency of our neighbourhood and our cities will maybe benefit in Plan B. I feel developing economic value and ways of benefiting our neighbours and our businesses may be better off as a Plan B. What I feel is the best fit for our community, the experience, and once again, city-town. I think a Plan B may well fit better for city-town to bring our town closer, more connected, increase the vibrancy closer to home, closer to the heart, which we've identified is Strathallan Corner. I think having the mix of the three is a social platform. It's more of a connector, and it will provide respite for people, unlike just the two together. So creating inviting spaces, shared public places, and a combination of library, museum and auditorium, for me, this is where I support it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Councillor Burt.
Around this table are 4 councillors who have been through this whole process around public scrutiny and controversy about 14 years ago with Seabay, and not in the position as we were as councillors, but as a team of people who raised over $6 million for Seabay. And, you know, nothing's changed. You put yourself out there and the proof ends up in the pudding. I'm glad that we're in a situation where we've had the critical analysis and scrutiny that's been added to this, and the experience that the other councillors at the table has been absolutely brilliant, because it actually has delved more deeper into the figures and everything. I still think, though, from given that that analysis and where we've been, despite this, and having been on the journey from the beginning, I do take into account the public consultation and its many iterations. I do take into account the location in terms of the strategy and strategic ability to look at where it is in the southern end of town, the Stafford Street, that everyone is so critical of us as councillors for allowing to get that state. And I won't go into the fact that that connectivity between decisions that we make and people in business don't actually connect. I'm happy to proceed with option 1, and I do it from a point of view that it'll never be as cheap as it is now. Plan B, if we do go to that Plan B, I will support anything that this council puts before us, because we are a diverse group of people bringing our experience together, and that's what democracy is all about. I believe that this option allows us to move on. Kicking it down the street and saying that we're going to move with haste and that it's going to cost about the same amount, we'll be in the same situation as we are now, probably 8 years down the track. I don't care how you're going to say that we're going to move with haste. We'll never move with haste to that level. And the cost between them in 8 years' time, 5 years' time, whatever, is going to be significantly more. And it's going to have the same situation where we are today with the impact of our ratepayers. Yes, it looks really, really good as a flyover and everything like that, but we have this very tangible thing in front of us, and I don't believe that the experience that our community are expecting is not suited to that proposition. So I am actually want to proceed with option 1. Again, caveat, I will support anything that comes out the other end of this decision-making process and get them behind the decision.
Thank you, Councillor. Shall we continue around the room? Councillor Scott.
I have said I support the declining of the South Base contract offer and pursuing a public consultation on alternative options.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver.
Yeah, I support the motion also to that. I just like to say, I think that Plan B will offer a lot to the district, not just Timaru itself. Having it as the jewel and the crown of the town itself will be quite good for the future of the town and people wanting to do business and things like that, knowing that that's right in the centre of town. I was all for moving something down to the bay, but I think you're just hiding things away. I guess for me, less cost in operations is obviously a big factor for me also going forward, so that's a big factor for me. And I've never really understood, living in Geraldine, what the infatuation has been with the south end of town. I still don't quite get it, I guess, and I've walked it a lot and I've done, but I can't quite understand that, so that's probably not really a factor for me that why I would want to leave it down the south end of town. And I think we just need to move on this with haste. We can't afford to be sitting back here in 5 years' time still determining where we're going with this. So I think if we move in at haste, would be definitely beneficial to everyone in the district.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Pye?
I'm obviously in favour of the resolution. I seconded it. I'm in favour because I think it would actually be totally irresponsible of me to commit $57.1 million of ratepayer money without having full knowledge of our full property portfolio, what repairs we need going forward, including earthquake repairs, and what replacements are needed. And I know it's in the long-term plan, but the long-term plan is just a plan. It's not actually committing that money like you are asking us to do today. And so that's why, and I'm not happy to commit to that money with so many unanswered questions at this point in time, and that's why I support the resolution. In relation to the strategy for the south end of town, we fully need that, and I think we need to think outside the box there. If we can't get any traction with development in that south end of town, maybe we should just gift all of that land to somebody who can, and we will get return on that from a developed town.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Piddington.
Cool. I'm really excited to be with a more progressive council, because 4 years ago I suggested a GLAM, which is a gallery, library, archives and museum, brand new, and it got thrown out. So 4 years later, we might look as though we might land. My problem with the current project is it'll increase our debt levels greatly, and it ignores the fact that our library is in trouble structurally. We also have projects in Temuka and Geraldine that won't go ahead if we put so much money into one project. Look, the vast majority of feedback I've got from people that are speaking to me, the ratepayers, is don't do it. We're spending a lot of money on a very narrow but passionate group. So perhaps if we combine those sites, and as Councillor Pye put out, made it a conference centre as well, or capable of doing those other things, and it reduces operating costs like Councillor Oliver, I think we're on the right track. As for the south end of my town, my mum came here 74 years ago and thought it was dying then. So some things don't change. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Well, if everybody in the room's done their maths, we know where we're at. What I would like to do is, for a start, I would like to recognise my fellow councillors. This has been one heck of something to work through over the last couple of years, particularly those of us who are brand new, and we arrived and it felt like the following week we were making a tough decision. And the decision, even last night before we walked into the room this morning, speaking to my fellow councillors, it was still tough. And what it said to me was how passionate you all are for the district. We want Timaru District to be the country's most livable district. We do. And that means different things to different people. To some people, it's all the essentials, the footpaths and the roads and the water only. To some people, it's what makes us vibrant, fun and exciting individuals. To some people, it's sports stadiums. And what's neat about this team, each one of us is different in what we see in the most livable district in New Zealand. But we are resolute in that we do want to make sure that our plans and what we determine we do going forward does deliver the very best value for our people. And I've been a lover of the theatre myself for many years, and I've been a supporter. I've performed in that theatre a number of times, and I was excited to see that hopefully this will one day happen. But at the end of the day, again, I want the best value for our ratepayers, and when we start looking at the library, and we are going to be having to do work there at some stage, like Bertie, you said, we get 3 for the price of 2 now. And the operational cost, which is the most important thing really going forward, year to year, it's going to be much, much less. It saves tens of millions of dollars over the next 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I do still want everything that we were going to get in the theatre, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how we deliver this, because it needs to be delivered very, very quickly, Mr. Chief Executive. And we will be looking for a timeline very, very soon. But just to formalise those, so the motion moved, you're just about to find out, moved by Councillor Booth, seconded by Councillor Pye. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very, very much, everybody, for their hard work. Thank you. That being just to tidy it up again, the outcome of the meeting is obviously publicly released. Our Chief Executive in public excluded, we passed a delegation on to our Chief Executive to work through what is confidential and what is not, so we want to get as much of that public excluded detail out into public as we can without compromising commercial sensitivity. And we are delegating the authority to the Chief Executive. Well, actually, this is another motion, sorry. Council delegates authority to the Chief Executive to...
Excuse me, Mr Chair, I think we passed that resolution in PX.
The last one? Yeah, we did too. So we passed a resolution for the Chief Executive. No, not that one we didn't. No, we didn't. Do we put a timeline on it please? Yeah, you've got a week to do it all.
I beg your pardon.
Yeah, he's happy with that.
Maybe you were just telling us what resolutions we were passing in public and I misunderstood. Sorry.
We just received and noted the reports. So the motion is that our Chief Executive will come back to us in a week with a plan for Plan B. To publicly release, yeah. No? You've got to come back to us with that. Yep. Yeah. Thank you. So on that note, the time being, I can't see it from here, sorry. Is it bang on 1? Declare the meeting. Pardon? What? Yeah, okay. You second it. Thank you, Gav. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. On that note, meeting closed, 1 p.m. Thank you very, very much.